Good morning, leaders. It's the beginning of February. January went very fast. In terms of my experience, it was a fast, which is grateful, I suppose, for many of us, because it's usually the longest month, at least by social perception. And the purpose of this video is really just to reflect. I've been overwhelmed a lot by reflections in terms of the work I've been doing with leaders, but also my own work as a leader. And I wanted to use this time quickly to kind of reflect on a few themes, and I want to be able to maybe consistently this year do at least one of these a month, just as a reflection on the month and what are some of the leadership themes that are emerging. And I think for January, the leadership theme that's emerging that I'm noticing is the leadership theme of trust. And what leadership trust, what I'm noticing is around how in a very fast moving world, we tend to struggle a bit as leaders in terms of how we build trust while we get things done. And I think there are four elements essentially to trust. But before I talk about that and how what I'm going to talk about relates to it, let me just share what are the two themes around trust that comes out, and that we can fit it into the leadership frame, into the trust frame. I think on Saturday I was sitting with a couple of coaches and we were doing a bit of a reflection, and then on Monday last week I was sitting yet with another group of leaders all together, reflecting together and learning together. And the theme from all of these conversations is twofold. There's first of all a theme around consistency or integrity or just fulfilling your word. And you can use the word commitment if you like, where you say yes to something and mean yes, and as a result act in line with your yes. I find that many of us as leaders still struggle with that idea, and as a result it without us noticing, it takes away from our level of trust, because of the four elements of trust. One is reliability, and reliability implies that when somebody says yes, you can rely on their word, you can take them on their word, and you can plan around their word. And it's actually one of my pet issues that personally I find I evaluate a lot of the leaders on. But in terms of all my research on trust and my research on credibility, reliability comes out very strong as an essence of leadership trust. And I find that we take it quite easily. We say yes quite a lot because we're busy. We don't get enough time to think about what we say yes to. I find that if we say yes to something that aligns to our purpose, it's easier to fulfill than when we say yes to something that's immediate and that aggrandizes our immediate requirements. So think about that a little bit. What do you say yes to often? And what is it then that makes you change your mind later? What is it that makes you adjust your diary? What is it that's driving your yes? Because once your yes is driven by purpose, it becomes easier to actually say no to some things. Because to say yes to some things means you need to be able to say no to other things. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is the whole idea of boundary management. I found that what came out in all of our conversations was the fact that many of us are still struggling in creating clarity around boundaries in general. And what I wanted to share quickly was the three quick boundaries that when we have them very clear, it helps in terms of building the relationships, in terms of getting things done and all of that. The first one is the boundary of task. I think that's probably the more critical. What are we busy with? What are we here about? and clarifying that very precisely up to the level of goals and outcomes. I find that we struggle a lot. We are always very fuzzy about defining what the task is. Words are not exactly very useful for us as human beings. And I think the second boundary is the boundary of space. Where is what needs to happen? I had a very interesting incident this morning, going to a coaching session with another leader, finding that his office has stated that we are meeting somewhere 28 kilometers away and 42 minutes away, which leads me to then have to leave at 6:30, only to find that our meeting is actually just down the road, which is 5 kilometers away, which requires a different way. So just the whole boundary of space. Where are we meeting? What are the kinds of conversations? Where are we supposed to have them? Are we having them in the office? Are we have them at home? Has a major impact on the outcomes, and having to be clear about it and creating clarity around that is always important. Finally, I think the boundary of time. When? What time? How long? Those kind of questions need to continuously always be answered. And it's always important to understand, in this world where things change quite quickly, those particular 3 boundaries have to be managed all the time. Don't assume because we've agreed at first that agreement aligns. So always check. We agreed on this, and this is the goal. Is it still where we are? Is it still what we are busy with? How long, how much is it going to take? I think for example, in terms of that boundary of time, we tend in our brain and our mind, we tend to be very optimistic about how long things take. But in this systemic world where things change a lot, sometimes it might take a little longer than we planned. And so how do we then respond when we've said yes and then things change? Do we continue to interact and recontract and all of those things? So those are the things that have been preoccupying my mind, giving me a bit of a headache. So I kind of just wanted to share them. But it's not just important that I share the stuff. I'm interested in what are your thoughts. If there are 4 elements of trust, which is clarity, if there is integrity or reliability, if there's concern for others, and if there's openness, where do the 2 themes fit? Clarity, definitely, as well as reliability, which I've spoken about. Now, here's a question for you. How is your reliability? What do you say yes to? And how often do you then find that you have to break your yes and do a no? And how often do you say no, and what do you say no to? Think about that and share with us. And what are some of the difficulties and challenges you have around managing boundaries and clarifying and contracting on boundaries? So let's talk about that. If this is on YouTube, you can comment below. Otherwise, I'm everywhere on social media. Let's have a chat about this as a leadership theme and a conversation. That's all I have for now, and I'm wishing you, as this February starts, a really great February and a really powerful week. That's it. Enjoy.